Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. Today I want to talk about something that I think should be a lot of fun and pretty interesting, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Now, I've started out with this Case Sodbuster because it's just dead simple, right? This is just meant to be a very simple cutting tool, and it makes the point that I want to start with really, really well, okay? This is a knife that's all about function, okay? It's just meant to cut. Now, what I want to talk about is the relationship between function and form, or to put it another way, you know, art versus ability. And so I think we all like knives that look really cool, and certainly there's a trend within the industry these days to get something that looks different, okay? You know, you think of Elijah Isham's designs, really, really cool looking designs. I'll throw a couple of pictures in here, but there are other knives like that where they do something different, they look very, very different, and they become very artistic. And often, you know, one of the things that really impresses me is when they still cut really well. So, you know, think of, say, the Van Huyst Snap Lock, think of the CRKT Dimension, think of the Spyderco Tough, think of the, you know, Jens Anso knives, think of Serge Pachenko knives. And there are others, but they all have a very distinctive look, and that makes them popular in the industry, which is really, really cool. Okay, now, here is the challenge. If you know that about the knife world, and so you're designing knives and you're trying to come up with something that's different and interesting and compelling and is going to draw people, you know, here's a knife that has a very distinctive look to it. Absolutely does. Let's see, I'll grab another example right now, and I'll kind of put the Case in the middle there to demonstrate the contrast. You know, so we've got some knives here that look a certain way. You know, GTC definitely has a look like a lot of those other designers. Here's the challenge though, and that is you've got to pull off your look, okay, your distinctive, interesting, whatever, while still providing something that functions really, really well, okay? And so essentially what we're talking about here is balance, right? So it's important that knives look cool and do something interesting and do something different that entertains and sparks the interest in all of us knife enthusiasts, so we keep buying them. But what we don't want to do is get to the point where something looks really awesome but has sacrificed a great deal of functionality. Now, I know, guys, that there's a whole world of pure art knives, and that's not really what I'm talking about here. That would be a discussion for a different day, and really I'd be the wrong person to have that discussion because I'm not super into strictly art knives. All right, but there are knives that really emphasize certain elements. You know, you think of a Medford knife, they're all about being strong, and they've sacrificed some other things to achieve that. There are knives that are meant to be very slicey. I think this would be a knife that, you know, this slices really, really well, but is it super strong and is it super durable? Maybe not, right? A Graham Razel has a distinctive blade that sort of defines other parts of the design of the knife and even the use of that knife, because, you know, it's got that sort of chisel end, which is going to require a certain amount of room in the handle and all kinds of other sort of things. Let's add here, while we're talking about this, that the other key parts of a design that have to be balanced are, you know, do I want to make this knife really, really strong and overbuilt? Do I want to make it really great for a particular task? Okay, a razor blade slices better than just about anything out there, but it's specifically suited to that and really nothing else. Okay, you know, and you could bring up lots of other knives, a paring knife or a scalpel or an axe. Okay, an axe cuts in a certain way and that's the only way it cuts, right? Where I think for most EDC knives and most folding knives, because that's going to be their primary purpose, need to strike a different balance than that. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about with this video. Now, let me say this, okay? When it comes to a cool innovation in design, you know, the best ideas are those that really pique our interest, that do something really, really cool, but also impress us with how functional they are. And I'm going to keep these here, but I'm going to bring something else first. So when Spyderco decided to put a hole in the blade of the knife, that was brilliant. One, it definitely makes their designs extremely distinctive, right? There's no mistaking a Spyderco because of the round opening hole, which is really cool. And from a you know, business standpoint, perfect, brilliant. But what makes it even better is from a function standpoint, it's great you right there, it's so well done as a way of opening a knife. It works really well. It works for all kinds of sizes and shapes of fingers. It works in all kinds of different designs and different handles, and you can see how many different Spydercos there are, all with the round hole. But the other thing is, I guess one other point is that it doesn't interfere with using the knife as a tool either, right? There's nothing in the way here that stops me from slicing with this knife. And you could even put the Spyderco out further and it would still work just as well. So anyway, I think a Spyderco is a great example of a design element that certainly changes the look of the knife, no question. Some people find it really ugly, but it also functions really well. And I've got a couple, these two knives I want to pick on as well because they have some features too. Over here we have a button lock, and by his own admission, Brian Ty loves button locks because of what they allow from a design standpoint. This lock is extremely unobtrusive. It only takes up this little bit of space in the whole knife, and because of that, you know, all the rest of this, you can do whatever you want. Design is not, you know, controlled by the functioning of this lock. You have tons and tons of freedom. There's some other great design. You know, I think of the CRKT, their takedown system that they've developed and use on the home front. I think that's a great system, and I think it'll do a lot of cool stuff in coming years. Here's another one. This the spring loaded tab. Okay, really cool because of the way it allows for a super small flipper tab. It's extremely unobtrusive, and it just nicely folds away and hides when the knife is open. And when I see this, you know, this knife is great and it's kind of a cool design, but what I really see here is imagine all of the cool stuff that CRKT, or I mean, wow, imagine all of the cool stuff that Zero Tolerance will be able to do with that flipper tab. Now, I don't know if, you know, I don't know what kind of an arrangement they have with GTC. Maybe they can only use it on Cecchini designs. I don't know. Hopefully not though, because I could see this being implemented in so many different cool ways that, you know, it's just a great little piece of design that does a lot to change the overall, a great little piece of engineering, I guess, that does adds a lot of freedom to where they can go with knife designs, right? It gives you a flipper tab that is not impacting the overall look of the knife, which is really neat. Okay, let me see, where's my hinder? You know, unlike this, okay, so here that flipper tab is there, right, and it's going to stick out all the time, and there are tons of knives where you have this horn sticking out the back of the knife that, you know, you've got to deal with from a design standpoint in some way. Here you've got a flipper knife though where you don't have anything sticking out the back, so it's pretty cool from a design standpoint. So now let's move on past that little digression and talk about some knives that I think are kind of form over function. I'm going to keep this one here. I'm going to bring this one in. These are good examples, guys, of knives that, you know, I wouldn't say I recommend as an EDC knife. Okay, they do cut, they do perform, and I do regularly EDC both of these, and they're fine. Okay, but are they going to be as versatile as something like this? No, they're not, right? So these knives I think are beautiful. I think they're extremely amazing designs, you know, and they're executed pretty darn well, but, you know, the look of the knife is extremely well achieved, but I wouldn't say they're the best in terms of versatility, and versatility is kind of the key thing you want out of an EDC knife. Now let me say this, well, I'm not opposed to making a knife that's form over function. There are a lot of knives that are beautiful. Okay, the form is absolutely on point, and I think these are all good examples. These are all gorgeous knives from an artistic standpoint. These are beautiful, right? They look great on Instagram, but guess what? They also function great in your pocket as an everyday cutting tool, which is, you know, these I think are knives that are just above and beyond because they look amazing and they're absolutely gorgeous, but they also function very well. So you're not asked to compromise anything to get a knife that works extremely well. Let me give a couple other examples in a different way. All right, here's a gorgeous knife that gives a really cool, nice piece of mocha, beautiful knife that functions well. It's a little small. By the way, this knife is still for sale. So if you're seeing this, you go, hey, that's a pretty cool looking knife, send me an email. I am looking to move it, but I want to give you one other example of a knife that is able to pull off something that's pretty interesting. This is, of course, the Cold Steel Formax, and this takes one property of the knife, and we talked about knives having different properties, whether they're supposed to slice well or be really strong or pry or whatever. Well, this is a knife that's all about being stupidly crazy strong, and it absolutely is that. Okay, this is an overbuilt knife. However, what I like about the Formax, and the reason I'm so impressed with it, is because here's an overbuilt knife that still cuts really, really well. And there are just so many overbuilt knives out there where they think they've got to have this insanely thick edge that now can't slice a tomato to save your life, okay? This definitely doesn't do that. This slices extremely well. This is a really, really highly functional blade. And because of that, I think this knife pulls off the overbuilt theme better than a lot of others, okay? By the way, it's also extremely comfortable in hand. Not the most well-suited to EDC for most people. I'm sure there's somebody out there who wears, 511 pants every day and who's kind of a bigger guy and can carry this without any problems. Of course, that's the kind of trade-off we're talking about. Now, let's come back to making the point that it is very, very possible, okay, to pull off a really artistic, really interesting, really cool knife that still functions well, that's going to work perfectly as an EDC, but it's not always necessary. Some knives are going to be fun. And this knife, if you're willing to make the compromise, the blade here, because it's a fairly short blade, because it's got that very abrupt tanto grind at the end, it doesn't perform every function that you want a knife to perform perfectly, but it does well enough that I'm willing to make the sacrifice to carry such a beautifully designed, or such a visually beautiful knife, even though functionally it's not ideal. Of course, here is a beautifully designed knife that functionally is pretty stinking ideal, and same with the Swift down here at the bottom. All right, so here's my final thoughts, guys. Balance, I think, is key. And if you're looking for a knife, and you're looking maybe at a knife, what I would ask you to assess is, now maybe the look is something that you want so badly, okay? Maybe you've dreamed about a GTC knife for years, and you'll never afford a custom, and so you look at this ZT, and you say, I just have to have it. And I totally, totally get that. And you're gonna be willing to make some sacrifices to get this knife that looks like this, even if there are some challenges to how it performs as a cutting tool, okay? If not, though, then probably something like this that, maybe it's not the most beautiful knife that's ever existed, but boy, does it perform. This is probably what I'm going to recommend for 99% of people. There is going to be that 1%, and really it's much larger than that when it comes to knife enthusiasts. We want something that's a little more interesting, that's a little more compelling, okay? And that's where all of these kind of knives come in. But yeah, balance is key. And what we really want is a knife that's really strong, a knife that's lightweight and easy to carry, a knife that's comfortable in hand, and a knife that cuts really, really well, okay? And there are lots of knives that balance those things out. I think these are good examples. Of course, many, many Spydercos, many, many Cold Steels, something like a Para 3 is a great example of that. And there are tons of examples of knives that do all of those things. And look, as a knife enthusiast, I'm always going to be down for knives that look cool, that are doing something different, that are offering me something that I haven't seen, haven't experienced before. But let me say this, as a reviewer, and as someone with a channel who's sharing this stuff with you, I am always going to ask that they perform. I'm always going to want them to, carry and pocket nicely. I'm always going to want them to cut well. I'm always going to want them to not rust or not fall apart, okay? A knife that's really light is awesome, but not if it's so light that, the first time you use it, it breaks in half. So my takeaway from all of this is I love these artistic, beautiful looking knives, but I do want them to do the job that a knife is supposed to do, and that's cut stuff. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below, and we will talk to you soon.